My very first mission was a scene. Yeah, it was like a chapter out of a book I read. I was like, man, this. But I find this out later. Of course, those are the missions that goes in the books, because no one would write a book to tell you about how boring my second mission was, how boring my third mission was, and how long it took me before I saw another exciting mission. But my very first mission was a daytime raid, short notice mission, landed in Chinooks. It was a bad guy barbecue with a high value target, and all his bad guy friends had showed up. And they're like, hey, we want you to, we don't normally do daylight raids, but this is too good to be true. There's too many targets here. We're going to hit them. We're going to hit them right now. Load up in these helicopters and go. And we did just that. The helicopter comes in. This is my very first mission. I don't even think I stepped foot in a 47 in the Q course. Like, we got Blackhawks every now and again, but and so this 47 looks like it's coming in fast. And in a 47, you're in this long tin can. You really don't have a lot of situational awareness of what's going on around you. The only thing you have is, if the tailgate's down, you can look out the back of the bird, but that's not a very big viewing port. The field of view is pretty narrow. And you have these little fishbowl looking windows on the sides, which again, don't give you a very good view. So I remember trying to look out of that little side window and thinking, man, we're coming in hard. But I don't know any better. Like, I guess this is how hard we come in, and yet at combat speeds. And I keep looking out. I'm like, we're coming in hard. And I was like, he's going to slow down. Like, I may not have experience, but common sense tells me this is too hard. And by the time he hit, I was just able to grab the cargo net and yell, hold on, like literally last second. Because, of course, you also don't want to be the new guy that yells hold on 10 seconds early, and then we land. They're like, what's hold on? What's that guy talking about? New guy. I remember my first mission.
Yeah.
So I waited the very last second, and only the guy in front of me heard it, Bill Gardner. And everyone literally falls. We hit so hard. If you weren't holding on to the cargo net, you were going to fall down. It's impossible not to.
Was it because the landing zone was just really hot?
Yeah, it was a daytime mission, and you're a big target in a 47, and they wanted to come in as hot as possible and leave as soon as possible. They want those big girls to get out of there. And I don't blame them. And I want to get as far away from them as I could too, because they're going to attract all the fire initially. So we went, me and Bill went from being like 8, 9, 10th in line to get off the bird, which would have been kind of convenient, because then I wouldn't have had to I just follow the guy in front of you. Like, you don't have to know much, honestly, except follow the guy in front of you. And whatever house he stacks up on, well, I guess this is our house. Luckily, I had done some pre-mission planning and studied the overhead. We call it a GRG. I studied the overhead imagery and studied and this is where we're supposed to land. And I studied it. And now that I'm on the ground, and now we're first on the ground, we step over all those guys that are trying to get up. Now me and Bill Gardner are leading the charge, and nothing looks right. Nothing looks at a ground level the way it did from overhead. And now I'm leading it, but I don't really know where I'm going. And it's a empty feeling. Luckily, the target building was the farthest 2-story building to the left as we're running at it. So luckily for me, it was easy I remembered that, and it was pretty easy to identify. But that village just opened up on us. Every house apparently had a machine gun in this village. It didn't take long for them to get them up to the rooftops. And I remember seeing, what looks like dirt jumping all around, and not really grasping what that is until the Chinooks finally took off, and you could start hearing the gunfire accompany that jumping dirt. Like, oh man, we're getting shot at. And really, generally, you kind of only have 2 reactions to combat. You either have a guy that comes in and he's like, I actually could have died today. And it kind of shakes him a little bit. And you have the other half that's like, that was awesome. We almost died today, but we didn't. That was really cool. And I know that sounds odd, but the more conversations I have with the guys, that's kind of the only two answers you get from combat. You either love it or you hate it. And kudos to the guys who hate it and still get on a bird every day. Cause that's what, that's what takes real courage, to be honest with you. It's not a whole lot of courage if you're not scared of something.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say I wasn't scared.
How did you feel?
I was nervous as never during planning because it's too far away. It's not real yet. Not as we took off, but as we got like halfway to target, realization started setting in. Well, I don't know how today's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you get the 1 minute out call and you start hanging out the side and you're looking for the building and you're starting to gather all these indicators, your mind's just too busy on the job at hand to be scared, honestly. One problem falls to another problem. Like, where are we? Can I figure out how fast can I figure out where we are on the map that I studied from this helicopter position? So you're just looking for identifiers. Like, okay, as soon as you get a good feeling, like, okay, I know that city. We're coming from this side. I know this is the target area. By the time you figure that out, it's about to land. As soon as it lands, now you're just running to the target compound. So you don't have anything to think about other than how fast, can I beat the guy in front of me? I mean, at that point, really it is. It's a personal competition to see if you can reel in the guy in front of you to be the first one to the door. As soon as you get to the door, you really don't have any time to think, because let's say we're putting up a charge and we're blowing it. Well, you're just waiting for that charge to go off. As soon as the charge goes off, you don't have time to think because it's time to enter in the room. And CQB is really fast. This room, whatever the problem was, the next room, new problem. What's that problem? The next room. So you really, like, once wheels down, it's about from 1 minute to what we'll call sector secure, or everything's cleared. You don't really have time to think about much. And then by the time it's all done, you're like, okay, that's now let me process it. And by then it's too late.
Mm-hmm. So within this mission, you had your first engagement, correct?
Yeah, we have our first engagement in this mission. There's movers all over the place. As we stack up, they eventually catch up to us, and it was their job we were actually a supporting role. They went in first. I eventually flowed in with them towards the end. But there's people to be engaged, moving from building to building. Got my first engagement there. Gotten to what I saw was my first close CQB engagement. And, really nothing really prepares you for being in a room with a AK-47, a man with an AK-47 that's loud when it goes off. The SF guy in front of me kills that dude. And it's really, it puts you in a different perspective as far as this. Like when you're doing training, you're just learning the dance moves. And this is what we do. This is what we do. This is what we do. You don't really, until it's for real and you see a dead guy on the ground with an AK-47, does it really hit home? He was close enough to kill me just as well as I was close enough to kill him. Like, it really kind of sets home that the good guys aren't always going to win. You're like, man, he knew exactly what door that we were coming through, but I didn't really know where in the room he was. And although you kind of know those things during training, it doesn't really set in until you do it for real. Yeah, and you're like, man, that was, that could have gone either way. Why does it always work out? It doesn't always work out for us, but it does more times than not. And it's just things you're too busy to think about.
So we'll come back to, I want to wrap up the mission, and then I got a question with that. But so how does everything else from there carry out?
That was supposed to be a quick mission. Get in there, clear that building, identify the high value targets, and leave. Because no one really expected that reaction from the whole village, we were told, hey, you guys are going to stay the night. You're going to search the rest of the village. So none of us were really prepared to do that. And we had our night vision, even though it's a daytime raid. We were prepared to stay the night. I wish I had a sleeping bag and more food. I remember that. But And the they sent an AC-130 overhead to help protect us, and that thing about every hour went off, shooting at something. Another update. We got guys trying to crawl on the west side. There's a group of them, and it really was that was the first time I had seen all of the resources of America on in one place. And training, I didn't get an AC-130. I didn't get an AC-130 at Robin Sage.
I can imagine.
And to know, you try not to overly rely on it, but to know, like, I had no idea there were guys on the west side in the low ground moving towards us, and who knows how close they could have gotten before we saw them. Even though we're all pulling security, this is their backyard. They know exactly what the most advantageous way is to get to you. But with AC-130s overhead, there's really no hiding. And I don't want to say that flippantly, because the enemy is also very creative at some point. There are some things they eventually, or some of them figure out they can do to help hide. But generally speaking, you're not hiding from it. And they kept us safe all night. They probably stacked up another 20 bodies that night. And every wave was unsuccessful, but it didn't stop another wave or someone else from trying to think they could do it better than the last wave. And they all met the same fate, thanks to Air Force CCTs and Air Force gunships. It would have been a much harder night if it wasn't for those guys. Daybreak comes the next day. We go out, and now it's like a different village. Like, people are just walking around like everyday life. We're starting to go out and search. There's still some dead people on the ground. They had moved some of them, but some of them they hadn't. Yeah, I'll say this. There was some innocent, innocence, not the word. There were some casualties of some people that, in your mind, you're just here to kill big bearded, black turban, Taliban, black eyeliner, AK-47 guys. And that's not always who gets killed on the battlefield. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't a part of it. You can go back to the ISR, and they were using women to ferry ammo back and forth from the buildings. So when their machine guns run low, they'd have a woman go out there, hide her stuff, underneath her clothes, and try to make it back. Not only the ISR show that, but the women with hidden belts of ammo trying to hide once we searched them would also prove that. But also, they were kids. And who knows what, I mean, there's so much, fire getting exchanged back and forth. I will tell you this, and I know for a fact, not a single American saw a kid and was like, oh, I'm gonna go plug that kid. It does not happen. That is not how we operate. But it is the unfortunate realization that war affects everyone in a village. In a firefight, sending rounds everywhere, exchanging fire affects everyone. I remember, looking at the bodies of some of these and going, man, I don't know if I came here to Afghanistan to do this. Like, love killing that guy in the in the first building and seeing him. I don't know. You're just kind of dealing with it. And Bill, the guy that I yelled, "Hang on," and we got off the bird together. He looks at me and he goes, "Brent, baby rats don't grow up to be beautiful little bunnies." And I know it's a dark thing to say, but to be honest with you,
it's realistic.
It's realistic, and you tell yourself what you have to tell yourself to get by some of these tough situations. I heard that comment. I agree with it. And I moved on, and to be honest with you, of all the horrible things I've seen in war, between 3 theaters of combat, I mean, you can sit there and lament over it and lose sleep over it, but I don't. I sleep like a champ. It just, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. It's everyone gets a vote. They didn't have to shoot at us. They didn't have to do bad things and live where women and children are at as they were attempting to kill Americans. You know, everyone gets a vote, and votes have consequences. And as long as we're not intentionally doing the wrong thing, that's how I can sleep at night, because I know I never intentionally did the wrong thing.
Looking back now, do you think you were ready for that at that time?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're ready or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't think you're ever fully ready. You know, and you probably could have asked me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ready. And if 44-year-old Brent was asking 26-year-old Green Beret Brent like that question, like, oh yeah, you're ready, and I'd probably ask him 5 different things that I know he was not ready for, and then I could have just picked him apart and be like, oh, but you said you were ready. But that's the answer I expect you to give me. I expect you to tell me you're ready. But 2, I don't think you're ever really ready until you experience it. You read all the books you want, and they help, but there's no substitution for the real thing.